exciting to be here and to see your lovely, wonderful faces. Are we all romantasy fans? Are we? Yes, we are. Amazing. That is so, so great. So romantasy, I mean, I've only become aware of this term in the last couple of years. Yeah, it's kind of new, it's kind of hot, but it is something that we've all been fans of for a really long time. Romantasy is not new. Would you, each of you, like to pitch us your series? Just really quick? No, you don't want to? Okay. All right. We don't have to do that. Romantasy, kind of a new term, but I'm going to ask. Melissa, Karina, AJ, do you embrace the term romantasy for your work, or do you define it differently? Because romantasy, like, it really runs the gamut. Like, it's adventure, it is magic, it is fantasy, it is romance, it is everything. How do you feel about the term romantasy?
Do you want me to go first?
I mean, I'm looking at your beautiful face.
I don't mind the term romantasy. I do find when I pitch my own series, I make sure that I always describe it as fantasy in the driver's seat, romance in the passenger seat, just so I set those expectations where they are for my series. But I love it when people include me in romantasy roundups and things like that.
Yeah, it's hot. Yeah, AJ, what do you think?
Is this on?
Oh.
No, hang on.
Here.
I can also just, there we go. I was like, I could yell. It's, it's okay. If you want to see how contentious the term romantasy is, just go online and watch people fight about it. So I've kind of given up. I let other people decide for me, and I go with the flow. But if someone asks me my opinion, I tend to actually do what Melissa does. I say that my work is more fantasy forward. And it's also very relationship forward. But I find that romance comes with very specific genre conventions, and I may not always follow them. So, fair warning.
Right.
I find that, I like the term romantasy. I like, it's a portmanteau, whatever. It's a combination of words. And if that helps with marketing or helps like people kind of be more interested, or it's just like easier to, pitch something when you just have a buzzword like romantasy, But the one thing that I've seen online is just people that the arguments over not just like what romantasy is, but what is fantasy romance, which is basically what romantasy is, but also then there's romantic fantasy, which is, and then when it all gets kind of blurred together, then people sometimes go into the books not really, they might be expecting more romance forward, but in fact they're getting more fantasy forward, or they're expecting fantasy and then they're getting, so you know what I mean? Like, it kind of gets confusing, but I think romantasy to me kind of seems like it's taken on the encompassing of like, it's kind of like equal in a way, like half and half. Like, I don't think you'd use the word romantasy for like a true romantic fantasy, you know what I mean? I think that would lead people astray.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with the word itself, yeah.
It seems like there are some essential differences.
Yeah.
Do we still get a happy ever after in romantasy? Is that an essential thing? Yeah? Yeah? You're looking at me like...
Depends what you mean by happy.
No, because I know your work is
I like to make
dark,
people
Melissa.
cry, but be happy that they're crying.
But are they together crying? I think that's what people want to know.
Even that, I think, is up in the air. It depends. You gotta ask the readers.
I think that's what we love, because it takes us to emotional places that we haven't been before. Yeah. So as the popularity of the romantasy genre grows, why do you feel readers are so drawn to these kinds of stories? What do they tell you about your work? What do they say? I mean, you make them cry, Melissa. That's something.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Why do you feel readers are so drawn to romantasy?
I feel like it's a safe way to play out a lot of different dynamics, especially for women. I feel like there's a lot of women reclaiming their own, reclaiming power, getting to explore things on the romance side in this really over-exaggerated way that feels safe and, is still fun, whether it's a shadow daddy or a fire lord or I don't know what's popular right now. I think knights are coming in. You know, and then I like flipping things on the head. So for me, it was writing a female character that was the morally gray one and stayed the morally gray one all the way through. That was fun. But yeah, I think that's what draws them to mind.
Because your heroine is a
She's an assassin.
She's an assassin
who has to kill her own people because the king's a meanie.
and people love it.
At least people who talk to me.
Well, hopefully you don't get people coming up and going. AJ, how about you? What do people tell you they love about romantasy?
So I kind of think it's a democratization of genre fiction a little bit, because romance has been a very marginalized genre for so long.
But the most successful
it
genre in
literally-
publishing.
Yes, you know, the publishing industry would die without romance. And it has been so gendered, but at the same time, like, women love fantasy too.
Yeah.
And I remember something that stood out to me was a reader once saying, you know, when I would watch films as a kid that were more geared towards boys, whether they were fantasy or action, I would always find characters to ship together, and like, you know, I would want the romance that was just never there, or it was just hinted at because, again, romance is so marginalized. And so I do think that so many readers love romantasy because it is this almost equalizing force that brings together this traditionally marginalized genre with a more mainstream genre that has been so, I guess, like, steeped in a more masculine space traditionally, even though so many women love fantasy and science fiction. So yeah, I think it's just quite literally bringing those two things together, and everyone has wanted it for so long, and it's finally happening.
We need more and more and more of it. Yeah.
I think that, I don't know, like in particular my romantasy, but just in general, I think what's really interesting to readers who are just discovering it is that if they've been reading a lot of contemporary romance, or even no romance, but say they're coming off of reading a lot of contemporary romance and they get into romantasy, you're having a lot more different dynamics that you wouldn't find in a contemporary. Like you've got like that are a little bit more believable, like, you know, the arranged marriage kind of thing, or like the enemies to lovers. That's hard to pull off in a contemporary because there's very few books that really, it's more like rivals or just like, we don't really like each other than we do kind of thing. But like in romantasy, it's like, no, she's trying to kill him. Like it's really like an enemies to lovers thing. So I think you're gonna get these dynamics that you don't get in contemporary. And also, like, magic's fun.
You can heighten it. You can heighten the drama in a way that you can't in the real world.
Exactly.
Is that what draws you to romantasy as a writer?
Me?
Yeah, being able to have that heightened.
Yeah, it is. It makes it more, you know, I've written a lot of contemporary for a long time, and so after a while, you know, and I have ADHD, so if I jump from genre to genre to see what interests me, and romantasy.
Your list of genres that you've written, like, are
all over the place.
Like 12 long.
So the romantasy to me is just kind of like, okay, well now if I'm getting bored with a certain kind of dynamic and setup, then romantasy, you know, oh, now you're free to still have that romance that you really want to write about, but now you can just play with so many different. I mean, the sky's the limit for what romantasy is. It could be in any kind of like type of time period, like could be like a portal romance, you know, like I have one, River of Shadows, where like it's based on Finnish mythology, and it's set in the land of the dead in Finland. And she goes there to find her father. It's based on one of the epics of the country. And she goes there to find her father, who's presumed dead, ends up having to marry the god of death in order to save him. So it's got a bit of the Beauty and the Beast thing going on. But that's a portal, so she's from our world. So she's in another fantasy world. So you can do something like that, which I really like to write. Or you can just do a whole new fantasy from scratch that you made up, or it could be based on mythologies from around the world and history. So I think that there's so many different kind of ways you can do it.
Right, the palette is really, really bright. Yeah, AJ, how about you? What draws you to writing romantasy?
This was actually a conversation we were having in the other room, where I didn't set out to write romantasy. Originally, I was just writing fantasy with romantic subplots, because I find human relationships endlessly fascinating. And so I don't think I will ever be able to write a book where there isn't some kind of romantic subplot, just because it is just so fun to write about people kind of learning about each other and coming from different backgrounds and figuring their shit out. But at the same time, what I noticed so much was that that's what people really gravitated towards in my books, was the way that I wrote relationships. And so I found that label got applied to me, even when it wasn't really my intention. And so I kind of just went with it because I was like, hey, like I actually really like writing about relationships, and so I'm gonna do more of that in these fantasy books, which is my comfort zone was fantasy. And so writing more romance became almost a challenge to myself to see if I could grow that side of my creative spirit, let's call it. And so that was really it. It was more experimentation and kind of almost a conversation with my readers. Not a literal conversation, but kind of just this like, you know, feeling the flow of energy and feedback and kind of going with it.
Melissa, you have said in other interviews that you've basically spent most of your adult life writing the Halfling saga, living in this world. What drew you to this genre? What was the impetus?
I mean, I guess me jumping into romantasy, COVID is to blame.
COVID. Yeah.
COVID happened and I was living alone.
To blame for so many things.
Yeah, lockdown, living alone, so I got on TikTok, and then of course it started showing me books by like the third video. Then I started posting books on TikTok, and then I was reading that first like huge romantasy boom. We weren't even calling it romantasy then. It was just like all of these fantasy romance forward books. And I was reading along with people, and I just noticed that it kind of fell into some of the same trappings that traditional fantasy had as an Indigenous person. Like they were very kind of colonial worlds at times, and I wasn't seeing a lot of representation yet for other worlds. So I just had this crazy idea of like, well, put the spec fic down. Agents don't have their inboxes open right now anyway, and go write a romantasy and then self-publish it and see how it goes. And then thankfully TikTok really liked it and it worked well, and then I got to continue the series. But I don't think I had to like think about being a romantasy author until I was well already into being a romantasy author. I'm very grateful for it because now I get to push forward with more romance-heavy books that I just didn't think was possible for me to write before the pandemic.
So that was your entry point to romantic fantasy, was basically COVID.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind of a time. Yeah. Within 14 months, I think I had read 20 series and published a book. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
COVID and ADHD are either, that's a powerful concoction right there.
Wow. And AJ, you were telling me when we were in the green room, you were deep in academia during COVID. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Which part?
I mean, I love hearing people's COVID stories because we've all been through the freaking ringer, right? Every last one of us. But I love hearing about it.
So everything kind of ground to a halt in 2020, including academia. Like we weren't going to campus. We were teaching online. So everything was virtual, and I really took it actually as an excuse to write fiction and not work on my dissertation, if I'm being completely honest. It was a great reason to just not be in that sort of academic headspace of self-loathing and imposter syndrome.
Yay!
Yeah, clearly. But, you know, writing fiction during the pandemic was actually really helpful for my academic work because the two kind of go hand in hand, since my academic life is also about fiction, but I'm more of the literary analyst, and I'm doing it in this sort of scholarly capacity and, you know, with an eye to historical context and all that. But in a weird way, like, writing fiction allowed me to practice what I preach in my research. So it was a very fruitful time for me creatively, less so academically.
And Karina, how about you? How many books did you write during the lockdowns?
Honestly, not much.
No?
No, I had problems writing at that time. I was just so stressed about everything that I had a hard time getting into it. But I did write.
So many writers. That
Yeah, I mean, I did I say that I didn't write that much. I mean, I still did, but like, I focused more on like lighter. This was before I kind of went back to like darker, so I was still doing my contemporaries. That was kind of like, the lockdown was the last time I did contemporaries, and so maybe it kind of just made me darker after the fact, but it was more I wanted to write lighter things that like people could kind of have an escape. Like I love traveling, so I kind of did books that were set in like Italy or in Fiji, and like in that kind of like nice escapism that people could just read and kind of like armchair travel away because no one was traveling, and just kind of give them that kind of escape. And then towards the end of the year, when I first started writing, I had a horror romance series that I capped it. I ended it in like 2000, I don't know when, 15 or something, at book 9. And then during the pandemic, I was like, no, I want to go back into horror romance, and I want to continue the series. So I decided to do a book 10. And that kind of like was a huge pivot that then after made me kind of go back to that. So I suppose it kind of broke me in that way, But no, it all works out in the end. But yeah, I think when you really think about it, it was probably the COVID did kind of make me shift genres and go to something a little bit more darker after. Even though originally I just wanted to have like fun and feel good, and I kind of felt like that was like my duty, like as a writer, to give people stuff that made them feel good. And then once I did that, then I felt like I wanted to give them stuff that felt bad. Like I said, ADHD.
Everybody's ADHD up here.
Yeah.
Coming back to you, Melissa, you said, you mentioned that you draw on First Nations traditions and spirituality for your fantasy world building. Can you give us some more detail on that?
I wouldn't say I draw on my specific nation's cultural elements, especially since the characters in the Halfling Saga aren't Anishinaabe, but the world view is definitely an inspiration for what's happening, and then centering a character who has been disenfranchised in that way and is actively being colonized, and then getting to pair that with the very interesting dynamic of everyone's fae and can live forever, so you actually have people who do remember the culture, and you get to play with that in a way that isn't true to my experience as an Anishinaabe person today. So it's uplifting and bittersweet, and like I said, that happy mix of crying, but you're happy about it, that I get to play with a lot in the books. But other books that I work on where it's more contemporary, and the characters are Anishinaabe, I will pull on those elements where appropriate. And yeah, that's also really fun to do.
Are these the books that you're writing right now, the more contemporary?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. There's books coming. I just can't
You can't
talk about it
it?
until Publishers Marketplace releases them.
Talks about it. Okay, fair enough.
Congratulations in advance.
Thank you.
Yay. AJ, traditions and beliefs that you draw on in your fantasy world building. Can you tell us?
So I'm former Yugoslavian, so I actually draw a lot on the sort of diaspora as a theme. Also, even though I never directly experienced the wars in the 90s in Yugoslavia, it is...
Thank God.
No, grateful for that. It is something that nonetheless impacted me, sort of being second party to it, and so one of the things that's always really fascinated me is this idea of like transgenerational haunting or transgenerational trauma, and how even things you don't experience directly can have such a profound impact on you, your worldview. And so really a huge theme in all of my books is like grief and PTSD, and this sort of the things that we inherit that are not necessarily ours, but we still inherit them. And I do incorporate a lot of South Slavic folklore in my books, just because it's not something that's really seen, or you get these like hokey, like Romanian vampire things on occasion, and I kind of hate it. So I have this like weird little mission to just actually include folklore that is not really well known around the world from that region, and to make it as authentic as possible. So yeah, that's some of what I do.
That is very cool. You also you study Japanese literature as well.
Yes, so my dissertation was on Japanese and former Yugoslavian literature. It was kind of a case study taking these two really disparate places in their moments of like political crisis and modernization and experiences of imperialism, and looking at the literature from those two places. So I'm very familiar with Japanese literature, specifically horror literature, but I'm also from former Yugoslavia, and so I draw mostly from former Yugoslavian heritage just because I'm not Japanese, so I'm not going to claim that, but I will say the horror has been very influential for me in ways that I'm not fully conscious of.
Yeah. Karina, traditions and beliefs that you draw on in your world building over your 80 books?
Yeah. Well, I've finished citizenship. So for the River Shadows series, I did no one knows a lot about Finnish mythology, and it's pretty metal. Like it's pretty hardcore. Yeah. So I was like, this is sweet. For the longest time, I really wanted to do something that was based on it. And it's funny because I remember talking to my agent, like maybe, I don't know, in 2018, 2019, being like, originally I wanted to was going to be YA because I thought that was, at the time, it was kind of like YA fantasy, romantic fantasy, a fantasy romance, that what was selling. Like adult, that didn't really seem to exist. It did, but not like we know it now. And so then she's like, well, the YA market's a bit up in the air. But that's what they always say. It's always up in the air. So I was like, okay, I'll just maybe get to it when I get to it. And then eventually I was like, no, I'm going to do it. Now that I saw romantasy kind of like starting to take off, I'm like, oh, well, there is a market for adult, fantasy romance. So then I was like, okay, and I'm just going to age her up. And it makes perfect sense to age her up. It wouldn't have worked as YA anyways, but I guess she has to marry the god of death. And yeah, it doesn't really have the same impact when you're 16. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was really fun, like really playing into Finnish mythology, and a lot of people, from Finland and family and everything, has said it's just really cool to see that, and a lot of people have been reading about it ever since, because it is a really cool mythology that a lot of people know the Nordic stuff, and my other side of my family is Norwegian, so I know the Nordic stuff, like Loki and all that, and that's popular. But the Finnish one is it's cool to have a little bit of a spotlight on it.
Yeah, it's set apart. I was in Finland a few years ago at the Contemporary Art Center, and the stuff that they were doing with swans and bodies and things. It's just
they're
really, really cool.
Pretty metal.
Yeah, for sure. On the topic of world building, coming back to you, Melissa, magic is such an important part of romantasy. How do you approach magic systems in your work? Do you stress over it? Do you have a whole binder full of how the magic works? There's been a lot of arguments lately about how whether or not it really is good for a magic system to be completely delineated and completely understandable in a book, or if we should leave some mystery there, or how do you feel about it?
I definitely have books upon books of lore and history and magic systems and different things when I'm writing a fantasy. Whether that all translates into the final manuscript is a different story. It depends on what that story itself needs. I think for me, in my approach to magic systems, it has to make sense in the world building, but also the theme that I'm writing in. I'm a very theme-focused writer. So it has to make sense to me from branching off in that theme to the character arc, and then informing the culture of the people or different peoples and how they might see that magic differently. And that's usually how I go about defining any rules. I definitely don't know if I'll ever play with portals again. That's a headache.
Is it?
Especially me. I went and said, oh, they only have some pass open when the sun's up. And when the moon's up, it's a whole different thing. That was a headache. I don't know if I'll do that again. Because suddenly you're referencing this map that you've made that does not look like the professional map in the book at all. And it's just kind of me outlining it and being like, okay, and how long of a horse ride is it to here or here or here?
Right.
You will never get a portal map from me. ever because I think my own one is wrong.
Well, and over 4 books as well, like you're getting complicated there, right?
Yeah, and then yeah, it's just leave that vague and mysterious, and then the readers can never correct you on it.
Amazing. Let's write that down. Let's put it on a t-shirt. AJ, magic, how do you approach it?
So I don't really do systemic magic.
Cool.
Personally,
That's one way of not getting in that trap.
yeah, I mean, I personally find systemic magic super tedious. I mostly rely on folklore and folk belief as kind of part of my world building. And currently all my published books actually take place in like our contemporary world. So it's not a second world with like a magic system. It's a contemporary world where magic exists, but in a very fluid way. So it's like folklore is like a knowledge system. So it's its own beast, and I try not to be super methodical or systemic.
Right, because
about
you're
it.
dealing with gods and demigods and that sort of...
Yeah, and I am also a very thematic writer, so for me it's also really important that the supernatural elements are actually in the service of the themes. So for me, all of that is like the magic and the supernatural elements are secondary to the themes, and often like have to just work with it. So for example, like I had a character in one of my books who can walk through people's dreams. And that is immensely tied to her own personal journey of learning to be less codependent, and because she kind of like trips into people's dreams, and so it's a little bit of a metaphor for like boundaries and sort of holding your boundaries and stuff. So it's stuff like that. So it's not. I'm definitely not making charts and graphs, or I don't have a Pinterest board of like magic stuff. It's very fluid.
Karina, how about you? Especially interested to hear about how you deal with magic when you've got multiple series going on.
I try not to.
You try not to deal with it at all?
Yeah, I mean, I am so bad. Like, to me, magic is math. And I am so bad at math. So like, I can't, it's like learning another language and plus math, like 2 things that I'm not great at. So it's like, I will do the bare minimum, like to set up a magic system. So like in Realm of Thieves, there's a magic system going on that has to do with the ingestion of dragon eggs, and depending what egg, like you never know what power you're going to get when you have the dragon egg, basically. And so that works for me because you can kind of be loosey-goosey with it because you don't know, like there's no set rules kind of really tying you down. Like there's some, but it gives me freedom to kind of like go with the flow. And if I didn't do that and was more like systematic and like methodical kind of set, I think I'd be breaking it all the time because I have a hard time keeping track of anything. So if I had that in the book, I think it would just overwhelm me. So I'm definitely on the board for like keeping it a little bit mysterious and out of reach. I will not be the person with the charts and the stuff because yeah.
It's just not what you do.
Not me, and everyone will be like, you got this wrong. I'm like, yeah, I sure did.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So character is just so important in romance, in all of writing. And I just want, that's right. We're going to go to, in about 10 minutes, we're going to go to questions. So I just want to remind you to get your questions. If there's stuff that you want to ask our beloved writers, please start thinking about that now. I am certainly nowhere near my list of questions, so I'm looking forward to hearing yours. And also, I just want to remind you to buy their books, buy all of their books. All of them.
Yes, please.
What's that?
She said all 80 of your books. And I was like, please.
Yes, please.
Yes,
please
please
do. So characterization is so important. Characters are so important. How do you approach characterization in your heroines and in your heroes? And I'm going to start with you, Melissa.
Ooh, that's a big question.
It is a big question. Characterization is harder to talk about than plot. So I always ask about characterization.
Yeah, I'm not a plot writer. I need a character
Yeah,
to
me
really do anything with. I feel like it's evolved since writing A Broken Blade. Kira in A Broken Blade came very kind of whole to me. Like I kind of had her whole thing before I sat down and started writing.
She's a very strong personality character.
She's something. It was rough writing her for 3 years in first person. She's not the happiest girl in the world. But yeah, I think now I definitely need to know the full character arc. So that makes writing series kind of interesting because I need to know everything that happens in the full series for me to be able to start it. And then I have to have kind of like a motivation that's connected to the theme that I'm trying to build out. And then I need to know, we're speaking of like relationships between characters too. I kind of need to have the secondary cast developed too, so I can understand how this person deals with relationships and what kind of personality grinds their gears and who are they drawn to and who might they come to like that they might not like during a character arc or vice versa. So I really have to focus on all of the characters to kind of build up my main character. And then that tends to happen in drafts. So like nobody sees my books until the third draft because that character is not the same from the time I start writing to the time
You're
I-
discovering stuff about the characters.
Yeah, which is funny because I'm such a plotter. Like I do not discovery write, but the characters I kind of find. It's like I have like an atmosphere or a mood, or like when you watch a movie and it gives you a certain feeling. I know the feeling I want that character to give me, but it takes me a couple of tries to get
That
there.
is so interesting. So you are a plotter for plot, but for character, you're a discovery writer.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely a plotter though. If we're talking about planning, like my outlines are like 40,000 words. It's
Amazing.
pretty ridiculous.
Amazing. AJ, how do you approach characterization? How do you characterize your heroines and your heroes?
So for me, characters are, again, I think of it as a conversation between me and something I'm interested in. And the character is sort of the embodied exploration of that. So for example, one of my main my main character in Wild Blood, I kind of, when I was writing him, I was thinking a lot about the sort of like cultural obsession with like morally gray men, or like the bad boy, or, you know, the guy who's bad for you, but, you know, like that sort of phenomenon. And I was thinking about like, well, what happens if I take a character like that and I actually explore what it would look like to be in a relationship with someone like that, like realism. And then we take that character and we put him into therapy, and you know, and so what happens when you take someone like that and you kind of tease apart all the things that make them morally gray, that make them bad, that, you know, make them appealing but also dangerous, and do you actually like lose the positive qualities, or are they just more themselves once they start unpacking that? And so I was very interested in like recouping the bad boy, but also being honest about, you know, what does it look like to be in a relationship with someone like that? And so when I say my books are very relationship heavy, that's kind of what I mean. It's less about following the trajectory of a romance novel where you watch people fall in love, but more watching them kind of like wrestle with their demons, and how those demons can spill out and, you know, affect other facets of your life. So yeah, characterization for me is very exploratory, but I place a strong emphasis on realism, like having realistic psychological profiles for these characters, and also being very compassionate towards them. So I don't do like trauma for trauma's sake, for example. I really try to be compassionate to characters that I give trauma, and there's like a light at the end of the tunnel usually.
Love it. That's great. It's such a, I've learned a lot just now. Karina, how about you?
For me, it's kind of like I'm a plotter too. So it's I think the plot and the characters kind of come hand in hand when I think of a story idea.
Totally.
And they kind of influence each other. And again, like I don't discovery write either, but I think I kind of do for characters because I have to write linearly. Like sometimes I can, if it's a series and I know the characters, I can jump ahead to a scene and write the scene because I already know them, you know. But if it's not a series, like, and say I'm bored, I'm stuck at a scene, sometimes people are like, oh, if you're just stuck, just jump ahead. Like I can't do that because like I don't know who that character is on that chapter in the future because I have to go through the journey with them to get to that chapter before I can write it, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's kind of the thing for me. And just characterization, they tend to come kind of fully formed. They are very real people for the most part, and I have to be able to relate to them in some way. Even if it's, you know, even the most horrible, you know, psychopathic people that I've written, like, there's still something about them that I relate to. There's always all pieces of me and everything, and I want to make them as relatable to people, other people, not just me, because, like, I really don't like reading books where I can't relate to the character at all. Like if someone, like I'm super flawed, and if someone's too perfect, I can't do it because
why would you do
I
that?
can't relate to you. And like some people do because they want to be, they'll do self-insert. They want to be that character. So that's like just their preference of reading. But for me, and sometimes it works against you, if people are wanting that, and then suddenly like, oh, I'm in this like super flawed character's brain. Like I don't want to be here. I want to be in someone who knows what's going on and like has their shit together. And it's like, well, it's generally not me. But sometimes it is. It's like depends on like the character and the story. I mean, they're not always going to be the same, but yeah, they have to be at least relatable to me. And I want to give readers someone that they feel like they too like can kind of connect to, you know? Yeah.
So one more just brief question from me, and then I'm opening it up to questions from the audience, as you all have questions, yes? Yes. So just briefly, my last question is, what is the most interesting or unique part or weird part of your writing process, Melissa? Interesting, unique, or weird?
I don't like admitting to this.
Well, you don't have to.
I guess I'll say for a woman who did not play with Barbies as a kid, I have a lot of Barbies now because I can't see anything in my head.
No, me either. I
So
can't.
when you're writing romantasy and you got fight scenes and you got sex scenes, you got to act some things out.
I love that. That is great.
So yeah, and I actually was mid scene choreography one time when a plumber came by.
Oh no.
He sent his coworker the next day.
No way.
It's a lot of Barbies.
AJ.
Oh man.
Can't top that. You can't.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I will sometimes like rush out of my writing den and ask my partner like, does this physically make sense? Like, you know, and kind of act it. So I mean, that's my version, and not Barbies though. Yeah,
We're all getting Barbies now.
that's a good
You can
one.
get them cheap on eBay.
I don't know if there's anything super weird I do when I write. I will sometimes like no context share screenshots with people, like things that I know will drive them crazy. And so there's like a slightly sadistic impulse to
Screenshots of your work in progress?
of what I'm drafting. And I'll send it to people who like, I'm like, you're not going to see this for 3 years. So, you know, and it's motivating.
So cruel. Karina.
I don't think it's weird. I think it's just, I think a lot of authors do this, but I always have to light a candle. Like I have, my office is just full of candles that are just burned halfway through or something like that. So I can't write. I mean, I can write without it, but like generally I light the candle and that kind of signifies like, okay, and if I'm not ready to like start working yet, I don't light it yet. So that's probably my like weirdest. Yeah.
That's cool. It's not very weird.
No.
You know, maybe next time
That's all
we
I
talk,
got.
you'll have something weirder.
Yeah.
All right.